I felt a little uncomfortable about the cripplings and arsons this person had been entertaining himself with, for I could not help feeling remotely accessory to them. But these thoughts were quickly banished, for the regular editor walked in. I thought to myself, now if you had gone to Egypt, as I recommended you to, I might have had a chance to get my hand in, but you wouldn't do it, and here you are. I sort of PG-63 expected you. The editor was looking sad and perplexed and dejected. He surveyed the wreck which that old rioter and these two young farmers had made, and then said, "This is a sad business, a very sad business. There is the mucilage bottle broken, and 6 panes of glass, and a spittoon, and 2 candlesticks. But that is not the worst. The reputation of the paper is injured, and permanently, I fear. True, there never was such a call for the paper before, and it never sold such a large edition or soared to such celebrity. But does one want to be famous for lunacy and prosper upon the infirmities of his mind? My friend, as I am an honest man, the street out here is full of people, and others are roosting on the fences, waiting to get a glimpse of you because they think you are crazy. And well, they might after reading your editorials. They are a disgrace to journalism. Why, what put it into your head that you could edit a paper of this nature? You do not seem to know the first rudiments of agriculture. You speak of a furrow and a harrow as being the same thing. You talk of the molting season for cows, and you recommend the domestication of the polecat on account of its playfulness and its excellence as a ratter. Your remark that clams will lie quiet if music be played to them was superfluous, entirely superfluous. Nothing disturbs clams. Clams always lie quiet. Clams care nothing whatever about music. Ah, heavens and earth, friend, if you had made the acquiring of ignorance the study of your life, you could not have graduated with higher honor than you could today. I never saw anything like it. Your observation that the horse chestnut as an article of commerce is steadily gaining in favor is simply calculated to destroy this journal. I want you to throw up your situation and go. I want no more holiday. I could not enjoy it if I had it. Certainly not with you in my chair. I would always stand in dread of what you might be going to recommend next. It makes me lose all patience every time I think of your discussing oyster beds under the head of landscape gardening. I want you to go. Nothing on earth could persuade me to take another holiday. Oh, why didn't you tell me you didn't know anything about agriculture? Tell you, you cornstalk, you cabbage, you son of a cauliflower. It's the first time I ever heard such an unfeeling remark. I tell you I have been in the editorial business going on 14 years, and it is the first time I ever heard of a man's having to know anything in order to edit a newspaper. You turnip, who write the dramatic critiques for the second-rate papers. Why, a parcel of promoted shoemakers and apprentice apothecaries, who know just as much about good acting as I do about good farming, and no more. Who review the books, people who never wrote one, who do up the heavy leaders on finance, parties who have had the largest opportunities for knowing nothing about it, who criticize the Indian campaigns, gentlemen who do not know a war whoop from a wigwam, and who never have had to run a footrace with a tomahawk or pluck arrows out of the several members of their families to build the evening campfire with, who write the temperance appeals and clamor about the flowing bowl, folks who will never draw another sober breath till they do it in the grave, who edit the agricultural papers, you yam. Men, as a general thing, who fail in the poetry line, yellow-colored novel line, sensation drama line, city editor line, and finally fall back on agriculture as a temporary reprieve from the poorhouse. You try to tell me anything about the newspaper business. Sir, I have been through it from Alpha to Omaha, and I tell you that the less a man knows, the bigger the noise he makes and the higher the salary he commands. Heaven knows, if I had but been ignorant instead of cultivated, and impudent instead of diffident, I could have made a name for myself in this cold, selfish world. I take my leave, sir. Since I have been treated as you have treated me, I am perfectly willing to go. But I have done my duty. I have fulfilled my contract as far as I was permitted to do it. I said I could make your paper of interest to all classes, and I have. I said I could run your circulation up to 20,000 copies, and if I had had 2 more weeks, I'd have done it. And I'd have given you the best class of readers that ever an agricultural paper had, not a farmer in it, nor a solitary individual who could tell a watermelon tree from a peach vine to save his life. You are the loser by this rupture, not me, pie plant. Adios. I then left. The killing of Julius Caesar, localized, being the only true and reliable account ever published, taken from the Roman daily evening fasces of the date of that tremendous occurrence. Nothing in the world affords a newspaper reporter so much satisfaction as gathering up the details of a bloody and mysterious murder and writing them up with aggravating circumstantiality. He takes a living delight in this labor of love, for such it is to him, especially if he knows that all the other papers have gone to press, and his will be the only one that will contain the dreadful intelligence. A feeling of regret has often come over me that I was not reporting in Rome when Caesar was killed, reporting on an evening paper, and the only one in the city, and getting at least 12 hours ahead of the morning paper boys with this most magnificent item that ever fell to the lot. Of the craft, other events have happened as startling as this, but none that possessed so peculiarly all the characteristics of the favorite item of the present day, magnified into grandeur and sublimity by the high rank, fame, and social and political standing of the actors in it. However, as I was not permitted to report Caesar's assassination in the regular way, it has at least afforded me rare satisfaction to translate the following able account of it from the original Latin of the Roman daily evening fasces of that date, 2nd edition. Our usually quiet city of Rome was thrown into a state of wild excitement yesterday by the occurrence of one of those bloody affrays which sicken the heart and fill the soul with fear, while they inspire all thinking men with forebodings for the future of a city where human life is held so cheaply and the gravest laws are so openly set at defiance. As the result of that affray, it is our painful duty as public journalists to record the death of one of our most esteemed citizens, a man whose name is known wherever this paper circulates, and whose fame it has been our pleasure and our privilege to extend, and also to protect from the tongue of slander and falsehood to the best of our poor ability. We refer to Mr. J.C. Caesar, the Emperor-elect. The facts of the case, as nearly as our reporter could determine them from the conflicting statements of eyewitnesses, were about as follows. The affair was an election row, of course. 9/10 of the ghastly butcheries that disgrace the city nowadays grow out of the bickerings and jealousies and animosities engendered by these accursed elections. Rome would be the gainer by it if her very constables were elected to serve a century, for in our experience, we have never even been able to choose a dog pelter without celebrating the event with a dozen knockdowns and a general cramming of the station house with drunken vagabonds overnight. It is said that when the immense majority for Caesar at the polls in the market was declared the other day, and the crown was offered to that gentleman, even his amazing unselfishness in refusing it 3 times was not sufficient to save him from the whispered insults of such men as Casca, of the 10th Ward, and other hirelings of the disappointed candidate, hailing mostly from the 11th and 13th and other outside districts, who were overheard speaking ironically and contemptuously of Mr. Caesar's conduct upon that occasion. We are further informed that there are many among us who think they are justified in believing that the assassination of Julius Caesar was a put-up thing, a cut-and-dried arrangement, hatched by Marcus Brutus and a lot of his hired roughs, and carried out only too faithfully according to the program. Whether there be good grounds for this suspicion or not, we leave to the people to judge for themselves, only asking that they will read the following account of the sad occurrence carefully and dispassionately before they render that judgment. The Senate was already in session, and Caesar was coming down the street towards the Capitol, conversing with some personal friends, and followed, as usual, by a large number of citizens. Just as he was passing in front of Demosthenes and Thucydides' drug-store, he was observing casually to a gentleman, who, our informant thinks, is a fortune-teller, that the Ides of March were come. The reply was, "Yes, they are come, but not gone yet." At this moment, Artemidorus stepped up and passed the time of day, and asked Caesar to read a schedule or a tract or something of the kind, which he had brought for his perusal. Mr. Decius Brutus also said something about an humble suit, which he wanted read. Artemidorus begged that attention might be paid to his first, because it was of personal consequence to Caesar, The latter replied that what concerned himself should be read last, or words to that effect. Artemidorus begged and beseeched him to read the paper instantly. However, Caesar shook him off and refused to read any petition in the street. He then entered the Capitol, and the crowd followed him. About this time, the following conversation was overheard, and we consider that, taken in connection with the events which succeeded it, it bears an appalling significance. Mr. Papilius Lena remarked to George W. Cassius, commonly known as the Nobby Boy of the Third Ward, a bruiser in the pay of the opposition, that he hoped his enterprise today might thrive, and when Cassius asked, "What enterprise?" he only closed his left eye temporarily and said with simulated indifference, "Fare you well," and sauntered towards Caesar. Marcus Brutus, who is suspected of being the ringleader of the band that killed Caesar, asked what it was that Lena had said. Cassius told him, and added in a low tone, "I fear our purpose is discovered." Brutus told his wretched accomplice to keep an eye on Lena, and a moment after Cassius urged that lean and hungry vagrant, Casca, whose reputation here is none of the best, to be sudden, for he feared prevention. He then turned to Brutus, apparently much excited, and asked what should be done, and swore that either he or Caesar should never turn back, he would kill himself first. At this time Caesar was talking to some of the backcountry members about the approaching fall elections and paying little attention to what was going on around him. Billy Trebonius got into conversation with the people's friend and Caesar's, Mark Antony, and under some pretense or other got him away, and Brutus, Decius, Casca, Cinna, Metellicimba, and others of the gang of infamous desperadoes that infest Rome at present, closed around the doomed Caesar. Then Metellicimba knelt down and begged that his brother might be recalled from banishment, but Caesar rebuked him for his fawning conduct and refused to grant his petition. Immediately, at Cimba's request, first Brutus and then Cassius begged for the return of the banished Publius, but Caesar still refused. He said he could not be moved, that he was as fixed as the North Star, and proceeded to speak in the most complimentary terms of the firmness of that star and its steady character. Then he said he was like it, and he believed he was the only man in the country that was. Therefore, since he was constant that Cimba should be banished, he was also constant that he should stay banished, and he'd be hanged if he didn't keep him so. Instantly seizing upon this shallow pretext for a fight, Casca sprang at Caesar and struck him with a dirk. Caesar grabbing him by the arm with his right hand and launching a blow straight from the shoulder with his left that sent the reptile bleeding to the earth. He then backed up against Pompey's statue and squared himself to receive his assailants. Cassius and Cimba and Cinna rushed upon him with their daggers drawn, and the former succeeded in inflicting a wound upon his body. But before he could strike again, and before either of the others could strike at all, Caesar stretched the three miscreants at his feet with as many blows of his powerful fist. By this time the Senate was in an indescribable uproar. The throng of citizens in the lobbies had blockaded the doors in their frantic efforts to escape from the building. The sergeant-at-arms and his assistants were struggling with the assassins. Venerable senators had cast aside encumbering robes and were leaping over benches and flying down the aisles in wild confusion towards the shelter of the committee rooms, and 1,000 voices were shouting, "Police! Police!" in discordant tones that rose above the frightful din like shrieking winds above the roaring of a tempest. And amid it all, great Caesar stood with his back against the statue, like a lion at bay, and fought his assailants weaponless and hand to hand, with the defiant bearing and the unwavering courage which he had shown before on many a bloody field. Billy Trebonius and Caius Legarius struck him with their daggers and fell, as their brother conspirators before them had fallen. But at last, when Caesar saw his old friend Brutus step forward armed with a murderous knife, it is said he seemed utterly overpowered with grief and amazement, and dropping his invincible left arm by his side, he hid his face in the folds of his mantle and received the treacherous blow without an effort to stay the hand that gave it. He only said, "Et tu, brute," and fell lifeless on the marble pavement. There was nothing in the pockets. There was nothing in the pockets. We learn that the coat deceased had on when he was killed was the same one he wore in his tent on the afternoon of the day he overcame the nervii, and that when it was removed from the corpse, it was found to be cut and gashed in no less than 7 different places. There was nothing in the pockets. It will be exhibited at the coroner's inquest and will be damning proof of the fact of the killing. These latter facts may be relied on, as we get them from Mark Antony, whose position enables him to learn every item of news connected with the one subject of absorbing interest of today. Later, while the coroner was summoning a jury, Mark Antony and other friends of the late CSR got hold of the body and lugged it off to the forum, and at last accounts, Antony and Brutus were making speeches over it and raising such a row among the people that, as we go to press, the chief of police is satisfied there is going to be a riot and is taking measures accordingly. The end.